There are languages that the mouth never speaks, and yet they are more powerful than any words ever spoken: the human body, the heart, and the soul. They understand energy. They absorb it. They translate it into feeling. And long before the mind forms a thought or a judgment about someone, your body has already responded. This is the first truth on the path of discernment. Energy never lies. You sit in front of someone who smiles, who says all the right things, who pretends to care. But your heart races, your chest tightens. You feel like you're shrinking, even though their words say, "I love you," or "I'm here for you." That discomfort is not random. That anxiety is not paranoia. Your spirit is picking up what your ears cannot yet comprehend. You walk into a room, and someone's presence pulls the joy out of it like a black hole. The space feels colder, heavier. Your laughter becomes quiet, not because anything has changed outwardly, but because the energy has shifted inwardly. We are taught to be polite, to ignore our intuition, to suppress the signals of the body. But to do so is to blindfold yourself in the dark. The body knows. The soul knows. When someone's intentions are rooted in jealousy, bitterness, or malice, their aura speaks before they do. You might hear yourself say, "I don't know what it is, but something feels off." Trust that. That something is everything. In many families and friendships, demons hide not behind horns, but behind habits. A pattern of constant interruption when you speak. The subtle dismissal when you express a dream. You go to bed, the laughter that follows your vulnerability. It's the cousin who always leaves you doubting yourself. The friend who only shows up when you're losing. The sibling who only listens to compete, not to connect. These are not just personality flaws. These are signs of energetic dissonance. It is easy to judge someone by what they show. It takes courage to feel someone for what they are. Because once you feel it, you cannot unfeel it. You realize some people don't drain you by accident. They do it because your light threatens the shadows they have been hiding in. They project their inner war onto you, and every interaction becomes a silent battlefield. You walk away from the conversation feeling heavy, confused, tired, not because of what was said, but because of what was transferred. When you're around someone who carries peace, your nervous system settles, your breath deepens. You feel safe, you feel free. Your ideas blossom, your thoughts expand. You don't feel judged, you feel seen. But when you're around someone who carries chaos disguised as love, you feel like you're walking through fog. You second-guess yourself. You apologize for simply existing. And eventually you feel small, even if they call you strong. That is how energy reveals what the surface tries to hide. And so, begin to measure people not by how they speak, but by how you feel once they leave. Some people walk into your life and the flowers grow faster. Others walk in, meaning go to bed, and everything begins to wither. Their energy pollutes your environment, and you spend weeks recovering from a single hour in their presence. It is not normal to always feel tired after seeing someone. It is not normal to always feel anxious before a visit. It is not love if your spirit feels imprisoned by the relationship. These are all energetic warnings, not psychological errors. Stop explaining away the signs. Stop justifying the way your soul whispers no every time they get close. We must reclaim the lost art of listening, not just to people, but to our own presence. Because the moment someone steps into your space, your field of awareness will shift. And that shift will tell you everything you need to know. Some people leave a residue that takes days to cleanse. Some people bring light and clarity in seconds. Learn to tell the difference. Learn to feel before you analyze. Observe your inner state before you judge their outer behavior. Because that is where the truth lies. Beneath the layers of sound, beneath the disguise of words, beneath the illusion of performance, there is only one thing that cannot be faking. The vibration of who they really are. The most dangerous poison is not the one that kills quickly. It is the one that numbs you slowly while convincing you it's medicine. This is how manipulation enters the soul, not as a threat, but as concern, not as force, but as love. And by the time you recognize the infection, your identity has already begun to rot beneath their control. When someone wants power over you, they rarely announce it. They cloak it. They clothe it in phrases like, "I'm just looking out for you," or "I know what's best," or "you can't do this without me." And because we are raised to honor the voices of our family, of our elders, of our friends, we don't question the hand that grips our spirit. We mistake their control for protection. But the truth is simply manipulation is always masked as care. Look closely at the words they use. They never tell you to chase your calling. They tell you it's unrealistic. They don't celebrate your healing. They say you've changed too much. They discourage your silence because they can no longer read your emotions and bend them. And when you assert your boundaries, they make you feel selfish, guilty, or cold. That is not love. That is possession. And possession is the favorite game of those who fear your awakening. They don't want to see you whole. They want to see you dependent. Because if you stand alone in truth, they can no longer mold your reality. So instead, they call their cage a shelter. They say things like, "You need me," or "Without me, and you'd fall apart." And little by little, you start to believe them. It starts with small compromises. You avoid topics just to keep the peace. You suppress your opinions to avoid their judgment. You smile when you want to scream. You nod when you want to walk away. And over time, their presence becomes a filter between you and your truth. But the body keeps the score. You'll begin to feel heavy in their company. You'll feel anxious before you see them and exhausted after they leave. Because their version of care is not to nourish you, it's designed to own you. This is why you must observe intentions, not just actions. A gift can be a chain, a compliment can be a leash, a helping hand can be a disguise for control. The question is not, what are they doing for me? The question is, why are they doing it? Real care empowers you. Manipulation disables you, then claims it was for your own good. And often, these manipulators are close, parents, lovers, friends. That's what makes it hard to detect. You don't expect betrayal from the same mouth that once comforted you. You don't expect warfare from the arms that once held you. But spiritual deception is subtle. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It flatters. It disguises harm as help. True care makes you feel free, not indebted. It doesn't demand explanation for your evolution. It doesn't make your growth about them. Manipulation, however, will always remind you of what you owe. It will keep score, it will say, after everything I've done for you. Not because it loves you, but because it wants a return on its investment. In obedience, in loyalty, in silence. And so, to escape manipulation, you must first see it. You must separate intention from emotion. Just because someone cries when you leave doesn't mean they loved you. Just because someone says they care doesn't mean they support you. Many people say, "I love you," when what they really mean is, "I love the version of you I can control." Do not be fooled by the softness of their voice or the titles they carry in your life. Manipulation does not come wearing claws. It comes wearing a smile. It wraps itself in familiarity. And it feeds on your need to be accepted. The moment you stop needing approval, you'll begin to see clearly who was helping you grow and who was dressing their control as compassion. There is a weight heavier than stone, deeper than sorrow, more toxic than hatred. It is guilt that is planted in your mind by someone who claims to love you. Not the natural guilt that arises from doing harm, but the manufactured guilt that is repeated over and over until it becomes your identity. This form of guilt is not a feeling. It is a weapon. And the one who wields it does not wish for your growth, but for your submission. Repeated guilt is spiritual poison. It numbs your clarity. It clouds your intuition. It traps your spirit in a cycle of shame where every decision you make must first be filtered through someone else's disappointment. It teaches you that peace is only found in their approval and that freedom is selfish. You become a servant, not out of love, but out of fear of being wrong again. In many families, guilt is disguised as discipline. In relationships, it is disguised as concern. "You never call me anymore," they say, not because they want to connect, but because they want to control your time. "After everything I did for you," they whisper, not as a reminder of love, but as leverage for obedience. "You've changed," they claim, but what they really mean is, "You've stopped allowing me to manipulate you." When guilt is used repeatedly, it begins to shape your identity. You start believing you are ungrateful, too ambitious, too cold, too selfish, because the ones closest to you cannot handle walking your light, so they dim it. Not with force, but with emotional strings that bind your worth to their moods. It's a slow poison. It doesn't strike in one moment. It drips into your spirit over time. A comment here, a sigh there, a passive-aggressive silence after your success, a disappointed tone when you express joy without them. It's not what they say, it's how they say it. Guilt is sewn into the poses, the expressions, the subtle glances. And unless you are awake, you will drink from it daily, thinking it is love. This is how spiritual assassins operate. They don't stab you. They suffocate your inner voice. They turn your power against you. They make you question whether your evolution is betrayal. And the more you grow, the more they punish you. Not with violence, but with distance. They withdraw their affection, their support, their kindness, and you who once sought to fly begin to clip your wings to keep their presence. But your spirit was not built for captivity. It was not built to walk through life apologizing for being different, for having boundaries, for healing, for rising. Guilt, when used as a weapon, is a way to shrink you, to shame you into staying small so others don't have to confront their own stagnation. They say, you forgot where you came from, but what they mean is, you stopped staying where I left you. They say, you've changed. But what they mean is, you no longer prioritize my comfort over your calling. True love may correct you, but it never changes you. It may offer guidance, but never through shame. It may set boundaries, but never at the cost of your freedom. Repeated guilt, however, is not correction. It is corrosion. And if you're not careful, you'll start to apologize for simply breathing differently than you used to. Observe those who always bring up your past. Watch how they remind you of your mistakes, not to help you grow, but to keep you grounded in the version of yourself that served their needs. This is spiritual poisoning, planting doubt where you had certainty, planting fear where you had courage, planting guilt where you had love. You don't owe anyone your spirit in exchange for keeping their ego intact. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that is always bleeding just to prove your loyalty. When guilt becomes the currency of a relationship, love no longer lives there. Because love liberates, it never enslaves, it builds, it does not bind. And anyone who needs you to feel guilty in order to feel close to you is not nurturing your growth. They are feeding on your imprisonment. There is a shift that occurs the moment you begin to see clearly, not with your eyes, but with your soul. When the illusions of obligation, guilt, and dependency begin to crumble, you start to notice what was always there, hidden behind performance, masked by familiarity. And when you awaken, not everyone will celebrate you because they fear your awakening. They don't fear your growth because they hate you. They fear your growth because it exposes them. When you awaken, your presence becomes a mirror. It reflects what others are avoiding within themselves. Your clarity unsettles them. Your boundaries offend them. Your peace agitates them. Not because you are wrong, but because they are no longer in control of your perception. You used to obey their tone. Now you ask questions. You used to doubt yourself after every disagreement. Now you trust your discernment. You used to chase their love. Now you no longer beg for crumbs. These changes may seem small on the surface, but to someone who built their identity on your compliance, they are terrifying. Your awakening strips their power. It rewrites the story they told about you, that you are weak, that you need them, that you wouldn't survive on your own. The moment you no longer fit inside their expectations, they label you as distant, arrogant, selfish. But what they're really saying is, I can no longer manipulate the awakened version of you. When you awaken, your energy speaks before your words. Your silence becomes louder than their noise. You no longer defend yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer explain your light to those who prefer darkness. And this disturbs those who relied on your confusion to keep you in place. They will say, you think you're better now? No, you don't think you're better. You simply realize you were never less. They will say, you've changed. And they're right. You've changed from controlled to conscious, from reactive to grounded, from pleasing to powerful. And that transformation breaks the spiritual contract that once tied you to their dysfunction. They fear your awakening because it forces them to confront their own sleeping state. When you break generational patterns, you become proof that change is possible. And people who are committed to comfort see that as a threat, not an inspiration. They would rather pull you back into the old narrative than question the limitations of their own. You'll notice this fear in subtle ways. The jokes that belittle your growth, the sudden absence when you start healing, the criticism disguised as concern, the way they say, you've become distant, when you've simply become selective with your energy. They will try to make your awakening look like betrayal so they don't have to admit they were benefiting from your slumber. But stay awake. Stay grounded in the truth you've touched, because your awakening is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of returning. Returning to your authentic self, returning to your intuition, returning to your peace. And anyone who fears that is someone who never truly honored your freedom to begin with. You must understand, your evolution offends those who only love the version of you that catered to their wounds. Your strength shines a light on their dependency. Your joy exposes their bitterness. Your healing highlights their resistance. So don't expect applause from those who once held the leash. They fear your awakening because awakened people cannot be controlled. Awakened people do not shrink themselves to keep the peace. They do not stay silent just to be accepted. They do not lower their vibration to remain relatable. They rise, and in doing so, they change the spiritual temperature of every room they enter. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. You are not abandoning anyone by choosing clarity. You are simply refusing to stay in places that punish your consciousness. Let them talk. Let them accuse. Let them project. Their fear is not your burden to carry. You were never meant to sleepwalk through life just to keep others comfortable in their shadows. There is a kind of power that doesn't raise its voice, doesn't argue, doesn't prove, doesn't perform. It simply exists, unshaken, unbothered, clear. That power is silence. And when you begin to walk in that kind of stillness, you'll notice something curious. The people who once dominated your life with control, guilt, and noise suddenly become louder, not because you changed, but because you stopped responding. Because silence makes them loud. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the presence of self-control. It is the refusal to waste energy where it is not respected. It is the line drawn between who you are, reactive, anxious, always explaining, and who you are becoming, aware, calm, untouchable. And that silence threatens those who once used your emotions as a tool for manipulation. The moment you stop defending yourself, they start speaking more. The moment you no longer take their bait, they increase the chaos. They raise their voice not because they're right, but because they're losing control. Your silence exposes what their noise was always trying to cover: their own insecurity, their own dysfunction, their own inability to handle your awakening. When you were reactive, they could guide the conversation. They could steer your attention. They knew how to press the right buttons to pull you back into their world. But silence removes those buttons. It becomes a mirror they can't escape. In the quiet, they are left alone with themselves, and that is their greatest fear. Because silence does something noise never can. It reveals. It reveals who's truly grounded and who only pretended to be. It reveals who was leading with love and who was leading with control. It reveals what the relationship was built on: mutual respect or emotional manipulation. And when the masks begin to slip, they panic. They try harder. They speak louder. They exaggerate your silence as aggression, even though it is simply peace. They will say, "You've become distant." What they mean is, "I can't access your emotions anymore." They will say, "You've stopped caring." What they mean is, "You no longer perform care under pressure." They will say, "You think you're better than everyone else now." What they mean is, "Your silence makes me confront my own noise." Silence removes the role they played in your story. And for many people, their identity was tied to your dependence. When you no longer react, they are no longer needed. When you no longer seek validation, they feel invisible. So they raise their voice, they gossip, they provoke, but don't confuse volume with strength. What screams is not always powerful. Often, it is simply afraid. You see, people who are loud in your silence are revealing their true motivation. If they truly loved you, your silence would be a signal to approach with care, not accusation. If they truly respected you, your quietness would be honored, not punished. But when silence makes someone uncomfortable, it is because they relied on your noise to avoid their own. And you must understand, silence is not passive. It is active alignment. It is choosing peace over performance. It is refusing to be pulled into arguments that go in circles. It is detaching from dynamics that steal your clarity. It is recognizing that not every reaction deserves your voice, and not every voice deserves your reaction. The world teaches you to speak, to explain, to defend yourself at all costs. But spiritual maturity teaches you to listen, to observe, to breathe, to withhold your energy when it will be drained instead of received. In silence, you return to yourself. In silence, you learn the language of your own spirit. In silence, you gain the wisdom that words often block. And so, the next time someone becomes louder as you become quieter, watch closely. Watch how their anxiety rises when they no longer have access to your reactions. Watch how they twist your peace into offense. Watch how your stillness exposes the volume of their dependence on your emotional energy. Because the truth is, the louder they get, the more your silence is. There are people who share your blood, but not your heart. People who share your last name, but not your values. People who sat at your childhood table, but now choke on your evolution. And as you begin to walk deeper into your spiritual path, one truth will confront you over and over again. True family is found in alignment, not blood. From the time we are born, we are told that blood is everything. That family means loyalty. That no matter what happens, you must stay connected to those who gave you life. But what happens when those who gave you life are the very ones draining it? What happens when the people who raised you now ridicule your growth? What happens when the house you were born into begins to feel like a cage you must escape in order to breathe? You are not here to inherit pain. You are not here to carry the dysfunction of generations just because it's wrapped in tradition. You are not here to be the emotional sponge of those who refuse to heal themselves. And so, you must begin to redefine what family really means, not as an obligation, but as an alignment. Alignment is the meeting of energy. It's the resonance between souls who see each other beyond the surface. It's the silent understanding between two spirits that says you are safe here, you are seen here, you are free here. And often, that kind of alignment is not found in the family you were born into, but in the souls you meet along the way. A stranger who uplifts your spirit without expecting anything in return is more family than a relative who constantly belittles your journey. A friend who holds space for your growth without judgment is more kin than a sibling who resents your transformation. A mentor who speaks to your higher self is more of a parent than someone who only sees your past mistakes. You begin to realize that DNA does not equal divinity. That lineage is not the same as love. That proximity does not guarantee connection. And in that realization, you are faced with a difficult yet liberating choice: to remain bound by guilt to those who no longer align with your truth, or to rise and create a new family, one built on soul, not blood. This is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of self-respect, because staying connected to people who poison your peace under the banner of family is not loyalty. It is self-betrayal. And spiritual maturity is learning to love people from a distance when their closeness is harmful. It is understanding that forgiveness does not always mean reunion. It is choosing alignment over attachment, even when the attachment is wrapped in memory and history. You are allowed to outgrow your roots. You are allowed to evolve past the beliefs you were raised with. You are allowed to choose peace over tradition. And you are allowed to walk away from the people who keep you small, even if they share your bloodline. Because what matters most is not where you come from, but where you are going. And on that path, you will find your real family, the ones who celebrate your healing, not compete with it, the ones who listen with intention, not with judgment, the ones who nourish your spirit, not drain it, the ones who recognize your truth, not punish you for speaking it. These are the ones your soul has been waiting for. Family is not who demands your silence, it's who empowers your voice. Family is not who holds you hostage to your past, it's who reminds you of your future. Family is not who guilt trips you into staying, it's who loves you enough to set you free. You don't have to beg for love, explain your boundaries, or sacrifice your truth just to be accepted. Because real family sees your light and doesn't try to dim it. They help you shine brighter.